the VSN Arcade Podcast.
Did I ever tell you what the definition of insanity is?
Minion! Draw the fire with your face!
Not the smartest way to greet the heavily armed group that just kicked in your door.
Head to virtualsportsnetwork.com and sign up for the forums today.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of VSN Arcade Sports Radio Podcast. Today, we're excited to have Rex Dickson, the Creative Director for Gameplay on Madden 15, with us. I am the host today, Mr. Bill, with the virtualsportsnetwork.com admin team. Please sign up for the forums today. So we welcome Rex to the show.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Glad to have you. Realize you guys are busy. This is going to be our big E3 podcast for the Madden 15 announcement. This will be going live moments after the media event there in LA that we'll both be at. So we would like for you to just go ahead and tell us right now what you guys have been working on that we should be most excited about for the Madden 15 release this August.
Yeah, well, we worked on a lot. This was a very, very big year for the Madden team. One of the big things that impacted this year and made it different from most years, if you compare last year to this year, last year on Madden 25, we had a Gen 3 product to get out, a Gen 4 product to get out, and obviously the NCAA 14 product. And a lot of the focus of the football organization here split across three different SKUs. This year that was primarily focused on the one SKU, the Madden 15 SKU, with most of the emphasis obviously on our Gen 4 product. So this year was a very different year for us because, last year was more about ensuring that we had that feature parity, that all the features and modes that were in Gen 3 came across cleanly in Gen 4. And this year, really the focus is on realizing the potential of that hardware and delivering a truly next-gen Madden game. We were pretty happy with the direction of last year's game. Obviously, it didn't really hit on all the points that people expect from next-gen. And this year, I think people can expect that this game basically screams next-gen. It is truly what we feel is really the first next-gen Madden game that shows where we're headed in the future. So a few big points of emphasis across the board. Presentation has been completely overhauled. We can get into the details, but everything from a pregame show and a halftime show to all new camera angles. But the biggest takeaway this year for presentation is we hired a guy from NFL Films, a guy named Brian Murray, who's with NFL Films for about 8 years, and he's got multiple Emmys. He's worked on Hard Knocks, Uncle Drew, and a bunch of other stuff. He is our new presentation director. He reports up to creative director Mike Young, and just having someone who's got that knowledge of 8 years of broadcast and NFL Films experience now shooting the game, it's a complete overhaul of presentation across the board, and it really feels like a totally different game, and not just in the presentation shots of the cutscenes, but also when you're playing the game, the gameplay cameras. There's been some significant changes there. So total overhaul of presentation doesn't look or feel at all like last year's game. The next big space is graphics and visuals. So if you've read the Madden 25 Gen 4 reviews, I think probably the biggest detractor towards that product was that the game doesn't look much different from Gen 3. I think that is mostly by nature of us choosing to focus on a feature parity port. This year, I can promise you, every single one of your listeners, that this game it looks and feels next gen. Everything from player likeness to lighting, weather's been touched. Player models have been completely overhauled. I don't know if you saw the Colin Kaepernick screenshot comparison we released today, but it's pretty indicative of how big of a jump we've made year over year in graphics. So you can expect that this is easily the best looking Madden game we've ever put out, and certainly competes up there with the best of best sports games in terms of player likenesses, visuals, and lighting. And finally, on the gameplay front, the big focus for us this year was defense, making sure defense was fun, making people feel empowered on defense, making sure defense was balanced with offense, big focus on coverage AI based on feedback we heard from Madden 25 Gen 3. And while there's, hundreds of other features that we worked on this year, I would say that those are the big three that I think really are going to move the needle this year.
Outstanding. So let's get into each of those individually then. When you're talking about presentation, you're saying a pregame and halftime show. Could you expand on that a little bit? Will we be seeing the use of the ESPN license at play, or will it be using existing studio reporters or booth personnel? How exactly will there be new people involved, or how
yeah,
exactly
there's new
is that
people involved. So what happened is in order to do the design that we wanted to do, basically we're contractually bound to like Phil Simms and Jim Nance, and we get a certain amount of hours of their time every year. And what our commentary team kept saying was, we need more hours in the booth to really capture enough content to get our commentary to where it needs to be. So what we decided to do was go after a talent that was local and more accessible. So a bunch of us who live down here in Orlando, where Tiburon is located, the local NBC news affiliate has a sports anchor. His name is Larry Ridley, and we all thought he sounded great on TV. So we actually gave him a call, and he was more than interested in doing it. And because we can have full-time access to him and get him in whenever we want to do pickups, what we were able to do is generate so much dialogue content from him that when he voices the pregame and the halftime show, it's all stitched together dynamically. So what you're going to get is a story of the game that you're playing, but no two stories will ever be the same, because the way he will stitch his different words together and piece together phrases and dialogue means that the halftime show will never be the same. You'll never see or hear the same thing twice. So what it does, the halftime show, is he basically does a statistical analysis where he compares the stats from the game that far, and then he goes through the highlights, and basically he walks you through all the scoring in the game and all the big plays, and all that is dynamically stitched together between the generation of the highlights and his voice over the top of it to create kind of like a seamless experience. It's really, really, it sounds phenomenal, and the fact that it's different every single time is really awesome. We really love that. And he's been a huge difference maker on the presentation front this year. We know that halftime show is a big deal for a lot of people. We'd wanted to get to it for a long time, and I feel like we did a really, really good job of it this year.
So tell us a little bit about how that halftime show will look. Will this actually go to a likeness of him in the studio going through a breakdown of the game, or will it be featuring video clips of the game along with his commentary as a soundtrack?
Yeah, it's video clips of the game with his commentary of the soundtrack. So it's almost like if you're watching NFL Red Zone, where they're doing like a recap, where they're showing the highlights and they're talking over top of it. But he's really energetic. He's really emotional, so he gets a lot of like emotion in his voice. It's kind of it's exciting. He kind of really pays off your successes in the game, and he does a great job of actually crafting stories. And we actually have this feature called Player Spotlights, so that throughout the game, depending on what stories are emergent. So for example, if you're getting a lot of sacks and the defense is being dominant and there's not been a lot of scoring, you might get an emergent story about how defense has dominated the game. And those will just pop up randomly throughout your gameplay, where there'll be a cut after a play, and all of a sudden you'll see this player spotlight story, and then it'll go back into gameplay again.
Okay. Outstanding. Looking at crowd reactions as part of presentation. I know in the past people have said that they would like to see crowd reactions be tied more closely to the action on the field. So, example being, the home team makes a big play, go for a touchdown, the crowd should go wild. And, on the inverse of that, if they're, really loud and then the home team gives up a big play, or, maybe they boo when there's a penalty against the home team. Will we see that kind of development on the crowd interaction within the game on the presentation side?
Absolutely. Like literally everything you just mentioned is in the game. And one of the biggest changes this year from previous years, one of the biggest problems we've had to solve in terms of crowd reactions is the idea of anticipation. So, like, a crowd doesn't all jump up the minute the player crosses the goal line, like it's a trigger. People realize 20 yards out that someone's going to score, or on a long bomb, if they see a receiver get separation, they'll explode the minute they realize that there might be a breakaway, or the minute a running back catches the edge and has open field in front of them, everyone will get up and freak out. So what we did is we built a new state into our crowd this year. It's called, we call it internally, we call it the banana state. It's where everyone jumps up out of their seat and goes crazy. And we built a whole set of new dynamic triggering logic to qualify breakaway plays or potential breakaway plays. And the cool thing about it is, like, if let's say you're running a stretch play to the outside and you get around that edge and there's nobody ahead of you, the crowd will immediately jump up and start going crazy. I mean, if you get tackled, for example, if you don't score, they'll immediately sit back down again and get deflated. So we have those kind of dynamic reactions. But, my personal favorite one is that on a breakaway run, as you're running down the sideline, the crowd is going crazy, kind of sharing that moment with you. And then when you're in the end zone, celebrating, they're sort of framed behind you and just going nuts, and it's a really nice moment. So yeah, I think everything you've just mentioned, we've been able to get in this year.
Okay, great. And expanding on that a little bit, what about sideline interactions? I know that sometimes, it seems like the sideline interactions, the players were disinterested in what was happening on the field. If you were doing a replay, it would seem like they were just standing around when, say, their running back went for an 85-yard TD to put them up late in the fourth quarter, and they would just be kind of standing around.
That's been addressed too.
Okay.
I wouldn't go so far as to say we've realized our full vision for sidelines yet. It's something we're continuing to work on. But some of the stuff you'll see this year is they won't always be in that static state with their arms folded, just standing there watching. They actually do have some celebratory states.
Okay.
They actually have dejected states this year. So, for example, if there's a big, like, let's say a third down pass to the sideline and the guy drops it or he lands his foot out of bounds, you'll see them actually react like dejected, like they'll slam their fist on the ground or, whatever. So they can react positively and negatively, and there's a few states for the sidelines. We've cleaned up avoidance so that now when you go running out of bounds, we have much better routines for getting them to move out of your way, as well as interactions where they might catch you in certain situations if you hit them head on. So it's gotten a little bit of work. I don't think we're at the point yet where we're saying like we fully realized our vision for sidelines and crowd, but you're definitely going to see an incremental uptick in both of those areas this year.
Okay. And also, I guess let's move on now to, I guess this would be a quasi-presentation / gameplay issue. The wind meter seems to have been inverted when you were in the kicking game. Is that going to be addressed this cycle?
I'm glad you asked. Yes, it's been addressed. We fixed it. We've actually completely changed the way wind tuning works and kind of what its impact on the ball is. The main place that causes a big difference this year is in the kicking game. We've redone the kick meter. It kind of looks the same, but ratings matter now. So your wedge size in the kick meter is very much tied to your kicker's accuracy rating. So kickers who are not as accurate will have a much smaller wedge, whereas kickers who are extremely accurate will have a much wider wedge. The other big change this year is that not everybody can kick a 50-yard field goal at max power. So basically what it was before is as long as you could fill that meter when you do the kicking mechanic, you could basically kick a 50-yard field goal with any kicker in the league. We've changed that this year so that it's more closely mapped to kickers' power rating. So not every kicker can kick a 50-yard field goal just because you maxed out the meter this year. That has accompanying pieces where, like, for example, we have broadcast graphics now that will show you your target kick line. So it'll project a line on the field that will show you what your kicker's distance is, and that's based on his ratings. And then the last piece, which is one of my favorites, is a new kicking arc. So it's a visualized line that kind of projects out from the ball. It looks kind of like similar to the Tiger Woods golf swing ball projection mechanic. You can turn this on or off. I think it's on by default on Pro and Rookie and off by default on the higher two. And what that enables you to do is actually visualize the arc of the ball and where it's going to go, and wind affects that arc. So if you have a strong wind, you can actually see how far you need to angle it in one direction to have the wind to push it back and actually make the field goal. And the other thing that does is it allows you to kick coffin corner punts. So you can basically angle your punt and project your line and basically position it somewhere between the 5-yard line and the goal line to try and pin your opponent back up against their own goal line. And that, all those kicking mechanics have really made a big difference in the game because now there's a real risk of missing a 40-plus yard field goal. Ratings matter and wind matters now. So big changes in that space as well.
Okay, that sounds like a really good thing. I'm looking forward to seeing that in action. Let's talk a little bit more about the kicking game. What are we seeing? I realize that, right now, on special teams, we don't have really any fumbles, on the special teams, side of the ball as far as the holder. We don't see any fumbled snaps where it doesn't happen a lot, in the real NFL, but it does happen occasionally. Has there been any chance to work with that and figure out a way to have it in the game, or is something that could be toggled on and off for players as an ability?
Fumbled snaps is on what we call a bubble list, meaning it's all this stuff that we kind of keep hearing about from people and we'd like to get to, but it fits into what we call a wish list category, meaning like we feel like it's sort of outside the core emphasis of what we really need to be focused on. The other thing about it is, a lot of the feedback we get is I don't like it when there's just some dice roll that causes a fumble or a bad snap that I have no control over. So there's nothing like that this year, but what we have done to answer another legacy issue around the snap is we've built a new mechanic on defense to make the snap count a lot more interesting. It's called the off the line mechanic, and basically what it involves is when you're playing defense and your opponent snaps the ball, you hit or pull right trigger, which is your speed burst move, and that gives you a bonus to your win chance. It effectively allows you to do like Palomalu type stuff where you can charge into the line right at the snap and blow up a blocker right on contact and make a play in the backfield. And the interesting thing that brought was we actually in the Xbox 360 we do haptic trigger rumble on the same trigger that you use to use that mechanic. So when the opposing quarterback does a fake snap, it actually jolts your trigger a little bit and it can pull you off sides. And we've also tuned up that when you're fake snapping, the chances for your offensive line to jump also go up. So you're going to see much more authentic false start and offsides penalties this year, as well as a much more interesting mechanic around the snap count than we've had before.
Looking forward to seeing that as well. So right now the bubble list includes looking at the possibilities of fumbled snaps on punts or field goal opportunities or extra point opportunities.
I do know we have it on punt returns. You can muff a punt catch.
Yes. Yeah.
I just don't think we do anything around the snap of the ball right now.
Yeah. And it seemed in the last cycle and the previous cycles, I considered it to be a little bit of a unethical tactic, but people would do a low line drive directional punt that resulted in a higher likelihood of the punt being muffed by the returner. Yep. Are you familiar with that?
Yep.
Is there anything that's been done to look at that?
Yep. It's actually a symptom of our pass catching system that when you angle the punt over far enough, that basically the returner has to speed burst to get to that catch point, and by the time he actually sets himself to catch the ball, there's not enough time for him to actually match the catch on the ball. So we've actually worked on that quite a bit. We don't want that's what we call an exploit, and we spend a lot of time every year trying to eliminate those from the game. And if we can't eliminate them, what we try to do is we try to introduce counters so that we have ways to combat those things when people are doing them to you. But we have looked at that one. We've made some changes with the way the whole punt kick return AI mechanic works. So hopefully we've zeroed that out. I certainly haven't seen any bugs on it recently, so my hope is that we've got that out of the game now.
That would be most appreciated by a lot of people, especially your more hardcore community that plays online a lot and are in the connected franchises. Another thing on gameplay, defensive assignments. I know they were in Madden 13. Then last year they were removed. I believe the explanation was that it caused it caused issues, I guess, with the way the plays were being developed on the defensive side. But I know a lot of people would like to be able to have their top corner shadow the other team's best wide receiver at all times. Yeah,
nothing like that. We do have something a little bit different from what you're describing. We've actually talked about that. It's a little bit more complicated than it sounds at first because of the way depth charts and assignments are set up in our game. Mm-hmm. It's definitely something we want to get back to and get back in the game, but when we do it, we have to do it right. We can't introduce a sort of a half-finished feature there. I will say that one of the biggest changes this year is a feature. It's a pre-play adjustment on defense, and it's called a just coverage technique. And it's kind of similar to what you're describing, except in other words, you're basically, you have control over what technique and what leverage your defensive backs are using. So essentially, whereas a cover two might normally get beat by a corner route, if you use outside technique, you can take away certain routes. So if somebody's beating you with a certain route, you can run the same defense but actually take the route away by using this pre-play adjustment. The other thing we have, which is kind of cool this year, is within the defensive playbooks we have disguise defenses. And what that means is it's going to look like one thing but do a different thing when you snap it. So essentially the pre-snap read is cover two, but as soon as the ball is snapped, the defense moves into cover four, and it can really confuse people, and it makes defense a lot more balanced and a lot more interesting to throw against.
Okay, well, I look forward to checking that out as we get a chance to go hands-on with the game. Looking at other things here as we get into actual gameplay, I know that last year people were very impressed as Madden 25 came out on Next Generation. It seemed that there was a noticeable improvement on the interaction between the offensive line and defensive line players. I guess what we called suction blocking in the past did not seem to be as prevalent in Madden 25 on Next Gen. Can you go into a little more detail on what's been done to improve Madden 15 line play interaction over what we saw in Madden 25?
Absolutely. Rather than go after another big feature in that space, what we really wanted to do is really focus on making sure that all the core systems that we built last year, and we put a lot of engineering resources against that feature. Obviously, we brought in a former NFL lineman to run that feature. So it was a big push for us. And this year, it got just as much attention, but what we really wanted to focus on is rather than adding something new that was big, is to make sure that we solidified that base foundation that we built last year and kind of got it to a point where we felt it was like dialed in. So a lot of the focus this year was on lead blockers and pullers, which some people noticed we had some issues with them in open field targeting last year. So we tried to zero all that out. We worked on a bunch of different nano blitz type exploits that we wanted to eradicate from the game. We've added a bunch of new pre-play adjustments. There's a new contain assignment that you can use on the defensive line, a max protection assignment that you can use on the offensive line, and a whole bunch of new animations. We have a lot more content now for down blocks, for reach blocks, something we call impact blocks for knocking people out of holes from pullers and stuff like that. It's just getting a lot of content this year, and you'll see much cleaner behavior from the lead blockers and the pullers. I think, for me personally, playing the game now in the E3 demo, I feel like this running game is more dialed in than we've ever had it before. It's literally like everyone internally has been raving about how good it feels for most of the cycle. We're in a really good spot with our running game right now.
Look forward to checking that out as well. So let's go into some other things that I know people were asking about. In the exhibition mode, is there a chance that we might see a playoff feature in the exhibition mode so that you can just set up to play a particular playoff matchup? Let's say, different types of things so you can simulate possible playoff matchups and things like that. Like if you wanted to play somebody online, like right now, you would have to simulate it in a CFM and manipulate it to get to that point. If you wanted to play someone online, I know you can do it offline, but let's say online, can you do a playoff feature?
Not that I'm aware of. I know that's been talked about. It's something that the CFM guys I think really want to get in, but as far as I know, that's not in this year. It's actually funny that you bring that up because a bunch of us yesterday were. Every time somebody mentions playoffs, we all get this tight feeling in our gut about losing NCAA and how badly we wanted this year's game to have NCAA on Gen 4 with the playoffs and everything, and just how much it hurts us that we can't play that game. So it's just funny that you brought up the playoffs because we were just talking about that yesterday.
Well, we try and be timely. So, also I know we had talked a little bit, last fall, when we were talking about, next gen Madden, the ability, for the offensive line for, a lot of times it looks like when you're playing online, and I was even noticing it still being somewhat prevalent in the MUT championships that I was watching on Twitch, which, by the way, I thought that was a great feature to be, basically 10 months after launch, that you still have that kind of interest driving in the game. So kudos to the team on that. But I was noticing that it seemed like a lot of that was the best of the best that had made it to the finals. They still seem to be employing that ability to snap the ball and run backwards quickly to try and just get away from the line. And I think, everybody says, in the real NFL, if you did that, your speed defensive ends would just eat you alive because you would you would outrun the pocket. You would basically just make yourself an unprotected target for, someone like a Julius Peppers or Clay Matthews to knock out of the game. So is there anything, will we see a change on, people being able to just snap the ball and run backwards this year?
If people want to do that, they still can, obviously, but I don't think it's going to work out so well for you as it has in the past, and a couple reasons for that. The first one, like you mentioned, a lot of our DNs, especially if you come out in like a nickel wide formation, are going to take outside speed rush animations, and the blockers, your tackles, are expecting you to be in the pocket. So if you drop back that far, you're essentially potentially losing the protection of your tackles because they're going to beat around their outside shoulder. Pass rush has gotten a serious overhaul this year. Everything from the way it's tuned to the user mechanics to basically everything. We've tuned AI win chances. We've tried to develop a system that we call a pocket timer, so that we time the amount of time you have in the pocket is realistic to what it should be in the NFL. It's probably more important than ever this year to recognize blitzes and have hot reads ready to go. The other thing we've done is we've built an entirely new pass accuracy system. And that's going to impact you if you're dropping back or rolling out, because our throw on the run penalties or throw while moving penalties are much higher now because we can actually reflect that in the kind of pass that you throw. So pass accuracy has been completely redone this year. We've added a lot more variation, which allowed us to actually do greater penalties for things like throwing off your back foot while you're backpedaling in the pocket or throwing on the run while you're scrambling outside. Accuracy matters this year. When you play Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, it's not going to feel like when you're playing against like a Geno Smith or a Chad Henne. Totally different experiences playing against those types of quarterbacks. Just to get back to what you said earlier, the biggest factor in all that is going to be the pass rush, and the quarterback accuracy features are going to make that feel completely different this year.
Okay. Well, so playing off of that then, it sounds like there's going to be, a lot more noticeable difference across the board then for ratings and attributes, so it would, sounds like they would matter for all players. If it is for quarterbacks, then it would have been, would that be an accurate assessment to say that we're going to see?
Absolutely correct. One of the biggest things that our game changers, our hardcore community guys, pretty much every time they come down here, they say ratings need to matter. We need to see uniqueness between players. We need to see unique styles, archetypes, traits, stuff like that. It's really, really important to people. It's going to take us several years to really deliver that fully across the entire game, where we have multiple sort of archetypes per position in terms of styles. But this year, we've made ratings matter more than ever. It's kind of just built into all the mechanics this year. The first place you're going to really feel that is in the quarterback play. And like I said, the accuracy feature makes a very big deal in game. It is very tough on defense to stop, the most elite quarterbacks because they're just very accurate this year. Obviously when you're playing against a guy like Jake Locker or Cam Newton, quarterback scrambles are a very big deal. I've personally experienced Jake Locker just tearing my defense apart because I was sending too much pressure, and he would just bail through the guard tackle gap and torch me for like 67 yards rushing on the ground from a quarterback. But you will never see Tom Brady or Peyton Manning behave that way. So behavior differentiation, traits and tendencies, we've really got that dialed in at the quarterback position this year, when we plan on doing even more with it next year. Another place you're going to feel it is in zone coverage. One of the biggest things that we learned this year, we actually had 2 Pittsburgh Steelers come down and work with us for a week, Stevenson Sylvester and Cortez Allen. And probably the biggest thing that they taught us was that in zone coverage, because they're looking into the backfield, they're reading what the quarterback is doing. And essentially the way the game used to work is break on the throw. So as soon as the throw came out of the quarterback's hand, defensive backs could then move in that direction and recognize where the ball was going and break. What we learned from talking to NFL players was that they break as soon as the shoulder is cocked. So it's basically as soon as the quarterback locks his shoulders in position and the arm starts going back, they break. And so the higher rated defenders this year are going to break much earlier and going to be able to make plays even across the field on guys that they weren't initially covering. But if you throw in their area, they'll be able to make a play on it. So it's very dangerous this year to throw against Richard Sherman. I don't even recommend throwing to that side of the field if you're playing Seattle. Patrick Peterson on the Cardinals is deadly. Revis is still as deadly as ever. And you're going to see a much greater separation across multiple features, but the break on throw one is what really jumps to mind between an elite player and everybody else. But that really spreads across the whole game. Running backs as well. We wanted to create a greater separation between the elites and everybody else. So pretty much across the board, ratings are going to matter a lot more this year.
Okay. So, and let's build on that a little bit, building on the defensive back reactions to the ball. I know that, a lot of people, this past year, we're seeing teams, that have mobile quarterbacks as being the more popular that you face online. Looking at, say the Seahawks, the 49ers, you see a lot of the mobile quarterbacks, the read option, seemed to be overpowered because it was almost like you had a split second of hesitation on part of the linebacker, when reading that play, rather than just attacking. Has there been anything done to boost the recognition at the linebacker position on the overpowered read option from last cycle?
We've definitely worked on the overpowered read option. Basically anything from last year that was deemed overpowered, like the route side run game and the other one being coverage is too loose, all those things got attention and got overhaul. So we've definitely worked on the read option. I know the main piece that we worked on was the quarterbacks were getting kind of a speed boost out of the handoff, which is part of the reason it was overpowered. So we've gone and we fixed that problem. You can still get caught in that unblocked defensive end behavior. It's kind of like, if we didn't do that, then any player could kind of blow up the read option by selecting that position if you knew it was coming. But we do branch you out of it much faster, so that even if you get in that unblocked behavior, you're still able to make a play in either direction. So we think we balanced that out pretty well. We're certainly aware of all the overpowered and exploit plays that we had from last cycle, and we've spent a lot of time trying to nominalize them. And one of the other things that I should mention there is I have at least 4 or 5 guys on this team who are, very high-end competitive Madden tournament players, guys who play, hundreds of games online every year, guys who are in the top of the leaderboards, and they're finding this stuff early and telling us about it. They're also remember all the stuff that's happened from last year's game online, and we've kind of made a list of all the stuff that we don't like and all the stuff that's overpowered or unbalanced. And over the course of the cycle, we've been hammering out every single one of them that we can. And obviously every time the game changers come in, they're big competitive Madden players. If there is a money play or an exploit or a nano blitz or a rocket catch that they find that they can use to abuse the game, they immediately tell us about it, and we do our best to take it out. The thing to understand there is that exploit plays, and I'll give you an example from last year, the back juke kick return exploit. We take it very seriously that when people figure out some glitch in the game or some inadvertent bug that we introduce that allows them to victimize their opponents, the thing you have to realize is that's not real football. So we take that stuff really seriously. We want to zero it out of the game. If we want to go ahead and call ourselves a true simulation game, that stuff needs to not exist. It can't be that the way you win Madden is by doing silly back juke exploits and angling your kick so you know the guy's going to muff it. it's our responsibility as developers to get that stuff out of the game, and we've done a lot of work towards that this year.
Good deal. Well, and let's play on that just a little bit further with the linebacker awareness. I've noticed a lot of people say that, when they're playing an opponent online, you'll see play action being just as effective on 2nd and 5 or 3rd and inches as it is on, say, 3rd and 15. I would think, in the real world NFL, no linebacker is going to bite on the running play nearly as much as they would on, say, 3rd and inches for play action. Is there anything that's been able to kind of look at that, or make it more realistic?
We tweak that stuff. Yeah, we tweak that stuff every year. But to be honest with you, play action has been a big ticket item that's been on our list for the last couple of years. We just haven't had the chance yet to get to it and do it true justice. What we really need to do in that space is build what we call a memory system, so that players have awareness of what plays have been run in that game. So essentially, it's very similar to a feature we had in NCAA called setup plays. And the idea is if you run, fallback dive multiple times, you set them up to run fallback dive fake HB flip. And that's kind of how play action should work. It's like if I run power O 3 times and I trigger this guy's memory recognition, says, well, now I'm expecting it, and now he's set up for me to run PA power O. That's really the true realization of play action that we need to get to. We're still a few pieces away from being able to go after that, but it could come in as early as next year, but it's definitely something that's on our radar and something we definitely know we need to do.
Okay. Look forward to that when you guys can get a chance to address it. Spinning off of what you'd mentioned about NCAA, one of the things that they had, a lot of teams now are running the NoHuddle up-tempo type of offense. I'm expecting we'll see that from Johnny Football in Cleveland. Is there any way that you could, when you're running a NoHuddle, that you could call any play from the formation with the same personnel on the field? That was something that NCAA had, rather than being limited to the 4, I guess, that would pop up as available to you in Madden.
That's exactly how it's going to work. We basically mimicked the NCAA NoHuddle system in Madden this year. So play call's been completely redone. So one of the ways, you can obviously NoHuddle the old way, where at the end of the play you hold down Y and it'll just run into the line. But we also have this new setting inside play call, which is tempo. And you can click on this button in play call and set your tempo to be NoHuddle. And then from that point forward, you will just run that offense consistently. You won't have to hold Y anymore. So that's one change. We've mapped it to the way NCAA works, where it's sort of like you don't get the play call screen in a head-to-head game. You just kind of come up to the line and you do all your play call by audibling and hot routing. I think in a single-player game when you NoHuddle, you do have access to play call, and you can only call plays from within your current personnel set.
Okay. That sounds good. I look forward to seeing that as well. And one last thing, I know we're probably getting close to our time here. On players as they receive the ball. In Madden 15, Madden 25, it seemed like there was a slight hesitation as a player would receive the ball. Say if you had somebody that was, say a 99 speed wide receiver that's out in the flat, and they suddenly get caught by an 85 speed linebacker because they hesitated for a moment after they caught the ball. Was there anything done to try and address so that those receivers might, I guess, maybe tighten that animation from the time they receive the ball until they can accelerate and create more separation?
Yeah. So really that problem was by nature of the true step technology is much more realistic. So if you're running like a drag route or an in, for example, and you're at basically your top speed, and the quarterback leads you out in front, you're carrying so much speed into that catch that as soon as you push up on the joystick to turn upfield, the way true step works is he has to actually decelerate enough so that he can turn, and that's when you get those chop steps before he turns. And that was kind of a frustration that a lot of people felt. We definitely were aware of that going into this cycle, that turning upfield after the catch was a huge problem that we needed to work on. It was sort of a refinement and tuning of true step and how it works. Because essentially being able to cut upfield at high speed was kind of battling with what True Step wants to do, which is make you play these gather steps and decelerate before you can turn. So we basically spent the first 2 months of the cycle working through all those problems and making sure we had them ironed out. And it should feel a lot better this year being able to turn upfield after the catch. But again, it's kind of linked to how much speed your receiver has after the catch. So, if you're leading him way out in front, it's going to be harder for him to turn. If you hit him like right in stride, obviously he's going to have an easier time turning because he's not gaining so much speed into the catch point.
Outstanding. Well, I think that'll certainly be well received by the community. And with that, we'll call it a wrap. I think we've got a lot of great information about the upcoming Madden 15 launch. We really appreciate Rex Dickson, creative director with EA Tiburon in Orlando, working on the Madden 15 game for joining us today. We hope that everybody enjoys the podcast. Take a moment to sign up for the forums at virtualsportsnetwork.com, and also follow us at VSN Gaming on Twitter or at VSN Gaming on YouTube. Thank you, everybody.